Hi, welcome to Spiritual Connection. I'm your host, Katie Augustyn. So I'm a transformation coach, I'm an energy healer, I'm a shamanic practitioner, and I'm the spiritual head of Transformation Center CT, which is located in Westport, Connecticut. And everyone is welcome to come to the center. We offer a variety of things like workshops, trainings. We're even going to have a retreat this summer. And once a month, we do satsang, which means in the company of the truth. So everyone is welcome to that, and we'd love to see you there. There's so much to experience and learn, especially if you're a beginner on your spiritual journey. So the Spiritual Connection show is really all about connection. It's about connecting with each other, as well as allowing us to connect more fully with our own spiritual selves. So I think you're going to learn a lot about yourself from the show. And one way you'll learn is through what our guests have to offer. And you're going to hear about their spiritual journeys and what is really important to them. So thank you for joining us tonight. So my guest tonight is Katherine Gray Silvan. Welcome to the show, Katherine.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. It's fun.
Yeah, happy that you're here. So I want to just read a little bit about you for the audience because they don't know you, okay? So it's a little bit of a summary of what you gave me, okay? So Katherine is an ordained interfaith minister. She's a licensed master's of social work as well as a Reiki master. Mm-hmm. So she worked as a spiritual and bereavement counselor for Hospice for 14 years. But that's not right now.
Right.
But currently, she's an inspirational speaker. She talks on topics of interfaith, self-care 101, and also being with dying. Really important topics. And she also speaks at colleges throughout the country and really about educating young people about tolerance and faith diversity, and also learning, and I love this, the art of self-love. Gosh,
yes.
What an important thing for us all
Yes.
to learn about. So we're going to hear more about that during our talk. Katherine is also a student of Vedanta?
Vedanta.
Vedanta, yeah, which is an ancient means of knowledge that sets one free from suffering. Wow. And she's made 5 trips to India in pursuit of this knowledge. Mm-hmm. I really would like to hear more about that.
Great.
Okay.
Yeah, I love talking about it.
Yeah. And what she does is she integrates her personal spiritual study of 34 years. I think you were about 2 when you started, right?
Thank you.
And her experience as an energy practitioner of 23 years into her work as an individual counselor now, a self-care coach, also a group leader and ritual facilitator.
Wow, I do all that?
I know, it's amazing. But I love the last thing that you sent me. You said that you were passionate about being a force of love in the world.
Yeah.
And couldn't we all use more of that?
Yes.
There's no such thing as too much.
Right. Yeah, for sure.
Well, great. Well, we are going to talk about all of these things.
Good.
Yeah, but first, I want to ask you the question that I like to ask all my guests at the beginning, which is, can you just share with us a little bit about your personal spiritual journey thus far?
Yeah, sure. It started at a very young age.
So you were 2.
I was close to 2. I mean, I have a very early memory of laying on the side of the road, supine, looking at the sky and contemplating existence. Just watching the clouds and wondering, like, what is all of this? What's really going on here? And a woman came to a screeching halt in her car and ran up to me and said, "Are you okay?
Oh, wow.
Have you been hit?" And I was like, "Dude, you just killed my buzz." Oh, no. I was just laying there having this beautiful moment.
Just blissing out, yeah.
Blissing out, contemplating life. And so that was a moment for me where I realized not everybody is contemplating existence. Not everybody is thinking about deep things. It was just a moment where I sort of really understood that I was a little bit different.
Oh, okay.
And then later on when...
So how old were you then?
I was maybe like 5 or 6.
5 or 6, okay.
And I always did sort of look at people and think, why aren't they talking about what's really happening? You know, why aren't they looking at things in this way or thinking about these questions that I'm thinking about? And then when I was in my early 20s, well, maybe mid-20s, I remember having a discussion with a friend about purpose, goals, spiritual goals, and I said something along the lines of, well, you know, of course we all want to understand existence and like what's going on here. I mean, if you could just have instant access to that knowledge, you would, right? And she said, no, I am not really interested in that. And I was like, oh, okay, so not everybody.
Again, it was reinforced that it's.
Yeah, it was just another moment where I thought, wow, you know, there are a lot of people that just kind of want to slot into the routine of, you know, growing up, going to college, meeting someone, getting married. I just was never interested in those things. Some of those things ended up happening, but more as a result of wanting to discover what was going on here, spiritually speaking. Who am I?
Who are you?
Why are we here? Why are all these people doing all this stuff? You know, like what are we getting from it? And so I always felt like I was on a spiritual journey, which, you know, I mean, I think we're all spiritual beings having a human experience. That was Teilhard de Chardin, right? And just not many people know it. You know, we're so in the body realm, in the three-dimensional realm, just doing all this stuff. And so sometimes we don't see the obvious, that we're actually powerful spiritual beings having a temporary human journey. Yeah. So from age 14, I was just studying like mad.
Okay, so that set you on your path of inquiry and learning and experiencing. Did you find other people that were interested along the way, I hope?
Very few initially. And as I got older, I met more people that were also, you know, doing spiritual work and studying and learning and things like that. But initially I was 14 when I started studying metaphysics. And it was actually Shirley MacLaine. I was watching TV on a Sunday afternoon, and her movie Out on a Limb came on the TV, and it was like a light switch went on for me. Because she was talking about things like destiny, creating your own reality, and this whole, you know, shamanism topic was in there, and I was like, wow, somebody's finally speaking my language. You know, so that's when I just began. I went to the New Age bookstore. I just started studying channeled writings and everything I could get my hands on.
Yeah, that's
from
great.
that moment
because
on.
That was before the age of the internet, so you had to go to bookstores and
yes, and that
libraries.
Bookstore doesn't exist anymore, which is really sad for me.
Yeah. I'm sure a lot of people now as well.
Yeah.
But now, do you sense that that has changed? That there's a lot of people that are interested in this topic and
yes,
moving forward, and
it's become sort of more common to talk about topics like near-death experiences and angels or energy work. You know, you never used to hear those things in common conversation.
Right.
Now I think more people are expressive about it and interested in it.
Yeah.
When I start telling my stories about spiritual experiences, or like through hospice, I had a lot of experiences that were metaphysical. And when I share those with people, they almost always have a story to share with me about a loved one who died and came back to talk to them, or that type of thing. So I think, you know, people are wanting to express it more interested in it. I think a lot of people are also just jaded with like the rat race. What are we getting all this stuff for, especially in Fairfield County? You know, what are we doing all of this intense, you know, striving and working and overworking, and for what?
Yeah, I mean, like what's the point, really?
Yeah, we've got all this money, you have all these houses, you know, your kids are going to great colleges because you bought them, you know, bought their way in.
Ooh, yeah, ouch.
But, you know, it's that kind of mentality that at a certain point you just realize, like, there's nothing of substance in all of these things that we have. They in no way fulfill us. Yeah.
I think you're right. I do get that sense. A lot of people are seeking, and that's a lot of the people that I've met and that I work with. They, you know, and honestly, I was probably in that space about 15 years ago, maybe less than that. That it's like, I have a great life, but what's missing? Something is missing. I didn't know what it was. And what it was a real spiritual connection.
Yeah. Well, good for you for, you know, making choices that allowed you to change
I had a
your
really
track.
good mentor that showed me that path, and her name is Kathy French. She's still a dear friend of mine, and so sometimes that's what it takes, is to find someone else who is already on that path and can help, you know, guide you and open your eyes a little bit, because it sounds like you were pretty much on your own and you did it. I don't know if I would have done that. I honestly don't know.
I think we get what we need. Like the older I get, the more I'm on this planet, the more I think that life is my teacher.
Yeah.
And sometimes life presents you with a teacher or a friend or a mentor, but we're always guided.
No, that's true.
You know,
we
we're
do have
always
that
given
spiritual guidance.
What we need, even if it's the challenges that bring us to our knees that cause us to then seek a greater understanding of what's happening.
Yeah, and sometimes that is what it takes.
Yes, definitely. It was in my case, for sure. My initial search, even though I was doing the New Age bookstore, was drugs and alcohol. And that was partly because it was so painful to be, you know, awake in a sea of people who were asleep, you could say, you know, that just were not functioning in the same way. It was like Darien High School, you know, just looking at the cars in the parking lot and what the focus of life was about.
I bet that was a painful experience.
Yeah, it was definitely bizarre.
How did your family or your parents enter into the picture?
I mean, they didn't really in terms of my spiritual path. Many years after I was studying spirituality and had a spiritual discussion group and was, you know, investigating more, my father gave me a book by Anthony DeMello, a wonderful book called Awareness. And he knew all this stuff all along. And I was like, why didn't you share this with me? Why weren't you talking about this? I mean, church was part of our life, but for me it was always nature that was my church, where I felt a presence of something greater and I could observe it in action.
Yes.
Over and over again, nature has just been an incredible teacher for me. So that's a lot of, like, the work that I do with people is helping connect them with nature.
Yes.
Years ago,
really
I did
valuable.
a CD for kids. I'm an total amateur, but I did a CD for children of songs that I wrote that's all about connecting them with nature, getting kids to observe the natural world and appreciate it and, you know, get wisdom from it. So I did a lot of Native American ritual and studied a lot of Native American philosophy in college. I went and collected sage on the hillsides of Colorado and did sweat lodges and all of that because I so wanted that deep and profound connection.
Wow. So you have had quite a journey so
Yes,
far.
yeah.
And then how did you get into your hospice work? Because that was what you did before.
Yeah, so my mother-in-law passed away shortly after I was married. And I was beside her in her final days and very comfortable being beside her. And I just observed how the hospice people were in her last stage of life. And I thought, what beautiful work. And so when I graduated from graduate school, I was in graduate school at the time, I was in social work school, but I had already become an interfaith minister.
I see.
And I called some friends I knew that worked for a visiting nurse in hospice of Southwest Connecticut. And I said, I'm just reaching out, looking for, you know, social work positions in the community. And this one woman said, "Are you still a minister? Because we don't have social work available, but we need a minister." Which ended up being such a blessing, because I saw what the social workers had to do, and I was like, phew, I don't have to do all that paperwork.
Right.
And more importantly, I could be really in the role that I was meant to be in, which was the spiritual aspect of death and dying and grief and grief work. So that's how I entered into it. And I think I always felt like death was not a fixed thing. I never really believed in it. I never bought into the whole, you're dead and that's
this
that.
This is the end.
Yeah. And I had experiences from an early age, grandparents, observing my grandmother's corpse was like, no, that's just not
her.
No, I don't buy it.
Yeah.
So I always felt comfortable around it, and so that it really worked for me.
Yeah, I'm sure that came across to your clients. Do you call them clients or patients?
Patients, yeah.
Because you had no fear of death, so that is a beautiful thing for them to experience, I would imagine.
Yeah, and I think I tried to bring that sense of fearlessness about it to my patients, and I would be the one that would whisper, in their ear, like, don't worry, you don't die. Just, it's your body going through a transformation. And I would talk to family members, who were open. I mean, some people I wouldn't be able to do that with, but the people that were, it was just so incredibly rewarding. And then I had experiences where people who had died would speak through me for their loved ones' benefit. And that was always a real blessing to be able to do that, and a total surprise. I mean, I was like, are you sure you want me? I don't think,
Yeah, right.
I'm not qualified. But then I thought, well, who am I not to receive this?
Yeah.
And whenever I did convey messages from people who died, who, wanted something to be revealed to their loved one, it was such an incredible healing that took place. And so those experiences are treasures for me that I take with me. And reminders that I was right, that death is definitely not, there's no evidence that you die, you as a conscious being. No. Just the physical, right?
Yeah, right.
So where's the evidence that the consciousness dies? And even modern physics will tell you can't kill energy. It doesn't. No. It just changes form. So.
Well, that's great that you were able to provide that service for so many people.
We don't know the effect that we have, but I tried. I did my best to bring a little bit of solace, and it's a hard time. I mean, even if you do believe in the continuation of life, you're letting go of something so precious. And it's incredibly painful.
Yeah.
Like grief.
Sadness.
Yes. Grief work is, they call it work for a reason.
Oh. Did you also do the grief counseling?
Yes. So I would follow people sometimes for a year plus after their loved one died. And they, often people would say to me, this work with you has been more valuable to me than the hospice piece, because I don't know how I could have gotten through, these months.
It's a long period. I mean, it needs to be, I think.
Yeah.
Typically.
Yeah. Initially, I think I could follow people. I mean, regulations started changing hospice, which was one of the reasons that I kind of got out of it.
I see.
It just became stricter about, what. I mean, they at one point said, you can't touch your patients. What? Are you kidding me? I'm like, I'm not going to do that. Sorry. I just wanted to be more free with the work that I offered, and so
that's why you moved on.
Yeah, now I'm doing private practice stuff.
Okay, yeah, still like you can choose who you do and how you do it.
Yeah, and it's not, I'm not really doing much with death and dying. I mean, some grief work, which I love to do, because for me it's tied into everything else that I do. In terms of helping people to be present in their body.
Yeah.
I mean, grief is such a time where you just don't want to feel. You just, you know, it's so difficult to feel the intensity of that emptiness, loss, sadness. And so actually it was an acting class where I learned how to be present in my body for the first time. I had done so many spiritual workshops and read the books and gone to retreats, and it was in an acting class where I learned how to inhabit my body and help other people to do that. And I tried it once with a bereavement patient. I said, well, let me help you get present, because this is what my teacher would do. Katherine. Have you ever heard of her? She taught in this area. Anyway, it was a miraculous thing, watching people just take a few moments to breathe and feel the sensations in their bodies, rather than tell the story about their grief. So they were, oh, this happened, that happened, and then this, and I can't stop remembering the last hours. They were so awful. And I would say, what are you feeling in your body right now? And tell me what that looks like. What form does it have? Does it have a color, a shape, a texture? And I would just invite them deeper in. And miraculous things would happen, and the body would offer wisdom. You know, it would guide them to see what they needed to see or feel what they needed to feel. And so much healing occurred just by being present. It was like, wow, this really works.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
That's fabulous, I've had some of that experience with through coaching, the transformation coaching. We use a lot of that. So
that's great.
Very helpful. Yeah, so that's cool. Well, one thing I'm curious about is, what is an interfaith minister, and how does that differ from any other kind of minister?
Yeah. Well, it's sort of, I always tell people when say I'm a minister, because they go, oh. I'm like, no, it's not that. Whatever you're thinking, that's not what it is. I sort of say I'm a minister, but I'm not religious. So interfaith to me is about spirituality versus religion.
Okay. Yeah.
So we believe that that God is love, and that there are infinite paths to love. And they're all valuable. As long as they're nonviolent, we honor all paths. And so I work with all different faiths and all different backgrounds, and lead rituals that are more universal, and say prayers that are more about universal love and light, rather than, you know, a liturgical prayer or something that's based in a specific religion.
So how does one get trained for that? Is there an interfaith organization?
Yes.
But I know it's not a religion, but an organization.
Yeah, at the time it was the New Seminary, and then the people that I had started One Spirit Learning Alliance, which is in New York City. But the New Seminary was the oldest interfaith seminary in the world, and was started by a priest, a rabbi, and a minister.
Oh,
Sounds like one of those jokes,
yeah,
right?
It does.
But they realized they were losing people in their congregations. And so they started this whole new paradigm for ministry, which is a really wonderful thing.
So what does the training look like?
Well, one of the reasons that I did it was for spiritual counseling, because that was, to me, that's what I do. That's my role, a spiritual counselor.
Gotcha.
Which, you know, again, when people hear that, they're like, oh, I'm not religious. It's not about religion. It's about your personal connection to whatever you believe in. It could be anything. So we study, you know, the major religions of the world. You learn how to do some traditional ministry, preaching, and that kind of thing. And then studying spiritual counseling. And there's more to it than that, but those are some of the basics.
So that's the underpinning of the thing. Okay. And so do you belong to a group where you're a minister, or are you kind of a freelance?
I'm freelance.
Freelance minister.
Yeah.
So how do people find you?
I do some ministry through Talmadge Hill Community Church. They ask me to preach every now and then. Sometimes I'm a guest preacher. But yeah, it's word of mouth. I lead rituals for people. Like I led a beautiful a gathering of women who were, one of them was very pregnant, about to have a baby, and we did a blessing way type of ceremony, which was a Navajo welcoming ceremony, and clearing obstacles for the mother to have a birth that's free of, you know, fear, And we created prayer flags for the baby and a bracelet for her to wear during the birth that was filled with all of our prayers.
Oh, that's beautiful.
You know, things like that, just bringing ritual into life. That's one of my passions. I love doing that work.
Yeah. So what about ritual is so appealing and so beneficial, do you think?
I think it just brings the magic into life, and it connects us to a mysterious force in life. That by doing a simple thing like lighting a candle, you know, we're connected to something bigger than us. I mean, the natural light is something bigger than us. Saying a prayer, connecting to something larger. So in that way, to me, it's just enriching daily life by doing simple things. You know, using a smudge wing and clearing your house, negative energy is a simple ritual that can just change the whole energy of your home, your heart, your mind.
Yeah. Does it bring a sense of freedom? Do you get that?
I think it certainly can, you know, depending on the type of ritual that you're doing.
Yeah.
It's all about intention, of course. So if freedom is your goal, which, I mean, I think all of us have that goal, we just don't know it. We're chasing all these other things. We really want freedom. But certainly if that's your goal, there are great rituals that you can do, like burning things that you perceive as obstacles in a fire.
Right, like releasing different...
Yeah, I've done that with grief people, families who are grieving. We've had bonfires, and I have them toss in, you know, everything they want forgiveness for, everything they ask forgiveness for, and everything they're grateful for. It's a really transformational thing.
Wow, I can see that.
It's a beautiful thing.
Really helpful. Wow.
Yes. Yeah.
Huh. That's great. Well, another thing I'm curious about, not to change the subject completely, but it's all related, of course, is what the work you do with the young college students about. It's all about love, or what's it called?
It's called Self-Care 101.
Self-Care 101.
Practicing the art of self-love.
Okay. So how does that?
Oh, I love this work. This is like where my heart just gets blown wide open. Because I wish I had had access to this knowledge and these tools when I was their age. So to be able to go in and offer some of these, which in many cases is like planting seeds, because a lot of them aren't going to just stop searching in the world for their fulfillment. And, I'm just going to look within now, you know? I'm just going to do the spiritual thing now. But it's so rewarding. So I start by, you know, asking them, how many of you had the course Self-Care 101? Nobody raises their hand. And I'm like, but you all have the prerequisite. You all have a self, right?
Oh, that's cute.
You know, like, how come you're in college and you never got this course? We don't teach it.
Of course not.
And then I offer them a definition, which I love, by a blogger writer named Brianna Weist. And she says it's not salt baths and chocolate cake. Self-care is making a choice to build a life that you don't need to regularly escape from. Isn't that awesome?
Spot on.
Yeah, and she said it's not about like having abs and keeping up with your fake friends. It's really about making choices that are sometimes hard and ugly, like sweating through another workout, getting a second job so that you can have a bank account and a savings account, or learning how to accept yourself so that you're not exhausted from constantly trying to be everything to everyone and then needing to take regular breaks from your life to do a basic thing like take a bath.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, that's great. And, you know, to me, a lot of it starts with self-awareness. Like, what do I need? You know, what's important to me?
Yes.
And then kind of build on that.
Yeah, and I mean, looking at the thoughts that drive us to do things that are harmful to ourselves.
Right.
Like, I'm never going to be good enough, or I'm not like other people.
Right, all the negative self-talk that we do.
That's huge. That's really where it's at.
Well, I'm really glad to hear that you're doing that.
Thank you.
And I want to thank you for being on the show. We're going to wrap up now.
Okay.
But,
thanks for having me.
Really
it's been fun.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure. I've learned a lot. So thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.
Yeah. And thanks to our audience for joining us. It's been a pleasure being with you as well. And we'll see you on the next Spiritual Connection.